You know, there are thousands of sites online, from YouTube, Facebook, social media groups, chat rooms and forums, web blogs, all designed to homesteading, self-sufficient living, rural lifestyle. And if you were interested in buying property or a house out in the country and you went onto one of those sites and you asked them, what are the top things that I should be looking for before I make a commitment? Well, you're going to get answers like water quality, soil quality, wells, access to utilities, zoning, restrictions, hospitals, the cost of living, what the local employment is like. What is rarely discussed is what a bad relationship with your neighbors can do to ruin that dream. Now, just assuming that your neighbors are going to be fine, well, that would be a poor assumption. An ongoing conflict with a neighbor, well, that's going to cause you to be angry, tense all the time. It's going to affect relationships, whether at home or at work. You're going to lose sleep. That affects you emotionally and physically. And once something like that has started, you either have to deal with it or you have to accept it. And the thing about all this is, it begins to erase all the reasons that you fell in love with that piece of property and that home. And before long, you know you just can't move, and you have that feeling that you're stuck. So I've come up with, these are mine, and they're in no specific order.
Red flags to watch out for when buying property in the country.
Now, of course, this applies to living everywhere else. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're in the inner city or the suburbs, a trailer park, a condo, a townhouse. It's all the same. But for the sake of this video, we're just focusing on rural living. And it doesn't matter whether you live on 1 acre or 500. Now, the examples on my list, these were all either relayed to me, I personally witnessed them, or in a few examples, I experienced them. But these are all issues that normally would be deal breakers if the buyers had been made aware of them before they signed on the dotted line. So when a seller is ready to list their property, then they fill out what's known as a seller's disclosure. And this is a legal document that is supposed to provide any prospective buyers with previously undisclosed information about the property. And examples of that could be plumbing issues or electrical problems, foundation, settling, flooding, termites. Depending on what state that they live in, there may also be an additional form for declaring, like if there's a family cemetery on the land. But I have yet to see a form that identifies when neighbors suck. Do the neighbors have a prominent business? Is there a slaughterhouse on site? Do they process hogs, cows, deer? Do they have an animal rescue? Do they board dogs and cats? A sawmill, a hunting club? Is there a lot of traffic, dust, road noise? This falls under the category of, if I'd have only known then what I know now. Boundary lines. Boy, this is a big problem, and it's more common than I used to think it was. But I have seen disputes between neighbors where fences were damaged or removed or destroyed. Surveyor stakes were pulled up. The best thing that you can do prior to closing on a property is have your own survey done. Doesn't matter if there's been one recently done, if the seller had one done. You need to have your own verifiable, documented survey that you paid for so that you can compare what is on the paper with what the physical perimeters of the property look like, if there is a fence or anything like that. And that way you can approach any neighbors that you may have concerns with and get that handled ahead of time. Something else that's common is for people just to feign ignorance. They didn't know. Or another one is, well, the owner didn't have a problem with it. It's the way it's always been. Unfortunately, boundary disputes can be like a gateway drug that just, if not handled from the get-go, spirals into bigger and deeper problems. Another story comes to mind of a lady whose husband died. She had 10 acres of land that she parceled off, 2 5-acre pieces. Each had a house on it. There was a pond in the back of the property. 1/3 was on one 5-acre parcel. 2/3 of the pond were on the second 5-acre parcel. She sold it, moved away. 2 different families in one house, 3 different families go through the other house. So there were 5 different families in each house over a period of about 5 years. Well, how could people keep moving in and out so fast? Because they couldn't get along. Nobody ever questioned before they closed on the property who was responsible, what was the liability, the property rights, the access to any of it. So you had, at one point, one side saying the other side couldn't use the pond, trying to charge the other side for maintenance, whatever was being done. It was a horrible mess. The point I'm trying to make is, if you don't handle these issues early on, they become problems later on. Noise issues, loud noise, parties, whatever. You either got to nip this in the bud or put some buds in. I remember going with a couple to look at a house one time, and as we pulled up into the house, well, first I want to say, attached to the side of the house, which was set back from the road about 250 feet, there was a kennel, 20 by 20 kennel, and there were about 10 dogs in there, barking, to the point where we had to walk away to talk. We could not hear each other standing close to the house. Before we pulled into the drive, directly across the road, and these were the only 2 houses around within sight, there was a house pretty close to the road. And as soon as we pulled into the driveway, a gentleman came out the front door of the house, looked at us, and proceeded on his porch. He had a couch, he had a rocking chair, and he had 2 large cabinet speakers. He proceeded to walk over and turn the radio up as loud as he could. Def Leppard, AC/DC, I don't know what it was. It was loud. There was obviously an issue between that neighbor and this neighbor. Whether he was ticked about the dogs, she was I don't know. I don't know. But there was obviously a problem. You don't know how something like that is going to turn out just because this house, these people, the sellers, leave and you come in. It doesn't necessarily mean they're going to look at you favorably. Maybe there's issues with that guy. I don't know. But that's a case where your realtor or you need to do a door knock or contact some people nearby maybe that might know of this person so you can kind of get some background. You need to be able to make an informed decision about something like that, because that was seriously, that would have been a real problem. Yeah, but that was them. Well, that's true. But if that's how he was dealing with the problem of barking dogs, how do you know how he's going to deal with you over some other issue that he may not care for? Trash. So you arrive at the home with the realtor, and as you're stepping out of your vehicle in the driveway, you look down the road just a ways, and there's another house. A couple burn piles maybe on the property, old tires, paper, garbage, debris. The wind's blowing it down the road and across this property. Well, what are you going to do? Now, personally, I'm a live and let live guy. I don't care if somebody wants to live however it suits them, until their rats become my rats, until their roaches become my roaches. And then that's a problem. Out where I live, there's no one to report to. So, and I would advise not getting an outside agency involved with your neighbors. That usually doesn't lead anywhere good. And some of you may disagree with when I said live and let live. And I understand that. The average home owner lives in a single home for about 13 years. Now, of course, there are people, job transfers, death, divorce, whatever, maybe 3 to 5 years and they're moving around. But 13 years is a long time to suffer with a disagreeable neighbor. And when I say live and let live, well, everybody has limits, and it should be within reason. I understand that people are concerned about property values. With the cost of real estate these days, resale value or things that you're going to pass on to the generation behind you, well, you should be able to keep that value and not lose money on something because your neighbor chooses to be a slob. Ignoring a problem like this is not going to make it go away. As a matter of fact, the longer it's allowed to go on without some sort of understanding or agreement, the worse it's going to get for you. Animals. Now that can encompass things like livestock. You know, whether they've got barns up close to the property lines towards the house you're looking at. You know, and there's manure piling up and there's odors. Or it can mean aggressive dogs, hunting dogs, loose dogs that come over. They're on the porch when the seller's coming in every night. They're killing the chickens or the sheep. I'm not telling you to dictate to your neighbors how they should live. That's not what this is about, and I try to keep reinforcing that throughout the video. What I'm trying to do is make you better informed and prepared so you've got the information you need now rather than later. And if that means having your agent contact the sellers or the seller's agent contacting them, or you actually meeting with them in person and getting details like, hey, you know, are there any things that I need to be aware of? You know, are these dogs a problem? Is that upwind? Telling the neighbors what they should and shouldn't do is confrontational and is a bad first impression. So I'm not advising that. Burning. Now, that's kind of a controversial issue because when you move out into rural areas, a lot of people, that's just practical. Whether they're burning brush, you know, or debris or trash, as some places, if it's allowed. People do it because it's practical or it's convenient. I'm not saying I agree with it or don't agree with it. But that's also something that you need to be aware of, especially if you're coming from the suburbs or the city. Those are things that people do. Now, sure, the people that are burning should be mindful of which way the wind's blowing, what they're burning. Trespassing. Now, that's a big one. If we were on Family Feud, that would certainly be in the top 5. Trespassing. And that's always been a problem, and it always will be a problem. But whether it's hunting, trail riding, hiking, foraging, you know, just riding ATVs, you know, then you have the issues of theft and vandalism, poaching, squatting. Now this goes back to another common excuse. Well, when they get caught, they'll say, well, a previous owner allowed it. Or, I've been coming here for 20 years. My grandpa used to let me swim in this pond when I was a kid. Now I have a neighbor who has a couple hundred acres of some pasture land and some timber. Beautiful ground. And as you'll see on this video, we were in my UTV a couple weeks ago and we just came over the rise, and down below in the bottom there is a family cemetery. It dates back to the 1850s. And we could see where somebody had been down there recently. And this guy doesn't go down there much. So we went down to check it out. And you could see where somebody had came up and cleared an area, had thrown a bunch of cardboard and firewood down, started a fire. There were beer bottles, broken glass everywhere, bullets. So you could see they were drinking and shooting. Well, apparently they had run out of wood. So they proceeded to tear the planks off the fence and the posts out of the ground and burn them from the cemetery. And if that wasn't enough, they decided that they would break 4 of the headstones, 1850s, off, level with the ground in this cemetery. Now, we don't know who did it. Probably won't know. The owner, a friend of mine, he's an older guy. He doesn't get out there much. I have friends with large tracts of property who will say they operate on a don't ask, don't tell. In other words, they will say, hey, if you want to go back there, that's fine. Don't tell anybody I said so. If you don't like hearing gunshots in the woods around your property, if you don't like seeing strangers swimming in your pond or fishing it when you come home,
we got to nip it! Nip it in the bud!
And of course, I can't go without mentioning easements. Now, easements, in my opinion, are akin to partnerships. And I learned a long time ago, the only partnership you should have is with somebody that has your ring on their finger. Partnerships usually go bad. Why? Because one person usually does all the work and the other one does all the complaining. Well, when it comes to easements, and I'm talking about easements for an access road to get back to a property, there's usually some sort of an agreement where the road has to be like re-rocked, maybe filled, dragged. Pond has to be treated. There has to be access kept clear. Tree falls, has to be cut and removed. And sometimes the documents that lay that out don't make it to closing, or the agent doesn't manage to get them to the buyer. so that there's not any understanding of what's going on with it. Years ago, I had a company. We did remodeling, construction. We were contacted by a bank one time on a property foreclosure they had. They wanted us to go in and shut the property down, secure it, winterize the property, and it had a well. And this was another similar issue where a property had been parceled up into 3 parcels. There were 2 houses on 2 of the parcels. We went to parcel number 1. That's all we were responsible for. And we shut the well down, got the rest of our work done. It wasn't too long after that that the owner of the second home on the second parcel contacted the bank and let them know they needed to come back and turn the well pump back on, reactivate the well. Because what was unknown to anybody, us, the bank, anybody involved, was that the well was shared. The owner of the first parcel shared the well water with the owner of the second parcel, who had electric running from his service panel out to the well itself. So they shared utility bills, they shared the electric bill, they shared the water. That was a mess because it wasn't on any of the title work, any of the disclosure forms. The bank had no knowledge of that at all. Those are the kind of situations, while they are rare, hopefully you have a good buyer's agent, the seller's agent, and the seller are honest so that you can be informed and make a good decision and not find out later after the fact ugly surprises like that. Not all neighbors are bad, and I don't mean to imply that. I don't have bad neighbors. As a matter of fact, the community that I've lived in for quite a while, we don't talk much. Most people out here like to mind their own business. And that's another thing about living in the country. You may find after you move in, somebody may stop by, say hello, welcome, introduce themselves. And, they may tell you a little bit about themselves, maybe their history or who they are or around the people that they know around the area, kind of help you to know who's around the area. At the same time, they're probably trying to find out a little bit about you too. And in my experience, what I found is that when I've had meetings like that, which were good, they would go and tell others about their experience when they met me. And the thing that I found about living out in the country is that you may only meet a neighbor once a year. Maybe you only meet him once, but they come by and they honk at me and they wave. And if somebody asks, hey, do you know the guy that lives down there, meaning me, they may talk about me like I'm a relative. Yeah, he's a good guy. It's wonderful that in this day and age, people can still refer to their neighbors like that without having to be in contact with them all the time. I can fix a leaky roof. If I move into a house and I find out the windows are painted shut, the wallpaper needs pulled off and removed, the floors are crooked, I can fix that. I can't fix a bad neighbor. And by the way, the old saying about fences make for good neighbors, well, that's true as long as both neighbors can agree on where the fence is supposed to be and who it belongs to. So what are some of the things that you can do to lessen the risk of getting a neighbor from hell? Some of the things I've already mentioned, but it's important that you get a good, experienced, quality realtor. And somebody, not just somebody that you first bumped into when you walk into the real estate office, somebody that's familiar with the area, maybe even lives in that area, somebody that may know the community. Put a card in a mailbox. Put cards in all the mailboxes that you find in the area. Leave your phone number, your cell number for a text or an email address. Just write out a short thing about who you are and you're planning on moving to the area. And is there anything that you should know about the community, the good and the bad? And you will get responses. People will be eager to tell you things about their community and help you to be informed. You can also contact your local law enforcement. Contact the sheriff whoever the county sheriff is. Find out what kind of activity is going on out there. If there are calls going to a certain area more than others. You can also go online and check places like city data. It's nationwide, first of all, but it is divided into 50 states, and from those 50 states, there are cities listed in the subheading, and from there, you can get a little more local, and if you're not familiar with that area, they can kind of tell you about what the amenities are. Places to look and not to look. You can also go online and check things like a sex offender registry. so that you don't find out after the fact that you're living next to somebody that you really aren't comfortable living next to. You can also go online and see if there's like a local Facebook group. You can find out who's building the house over here, what's that new store going to be, what are the hours for the new church. You know, I don't know, what was a car wreck about? It can range from gossip to actual news, but it's a good place to find out some more information. Now be sure to leave your questions and comments below. We love reading those. You can also find us on Facebook, Pinterest, and X, as well as our website, AmericanOutdoors.net. Until next time, thanks for watching American Outdoors. So long, folks.